Well, hello everyone. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the implications of personalization algorithms for individual autonomy. And these are the topics I'll kind of be dealing with. So I think that a good place to start would be to define what my understanding of personalization algorithms are, which are algorithms which use an already in place infrastructure of data capture and analysis as training data from which to train algorithms in order to tailor the type of content that individuals will see online. And it's when we say like tailor content, it's user preferences to determine what is content that people are likely to engage with, what's considered relevant content. And this is part of why we use personalization algorithms. In the one sense, they operate as an informational filtration system. They they increase the efficacy of information retrieval on search engines, on social media. And that in turn promotes, our satisfaction with these interfaces, because we get information that we're looking for. And it's things that are relevant to us, things that we find engaging, which in turn helps it, say, the big platforms like a Google or a Facebook to drive up network effects, because if you're satisfied and you find something engaging, you're more likely to keep using it. And that generates more activity on the site, and that creates greater data, which improves the personalization algorithm. Sorry, fumbling over my words. And so that kind of becomes a systematic loop. And where we're starting to see it in particular across platforms is in the use of things like targeted advertising. And again, there's an incentive on the behalf of the platform, because this is something that they can profit off of. So this is not entirely a beneficial system, because there are some drawbacks. We don't really understand how the algorithms are trained. We don't really know what information it looks to be effective, how it filters it, where is it present across sites. And we have some information that, for instance, some platforms prioritize certain content over other already, and that happens to be in the cases of, let's say, targeted advertising. So already in principle, there's the potential to skew the information that individuals are shown online. And then on a more micro level, you've got the formation of things called filter bubbles or echo chambers, and those are interesting to consider because they introduce the idea of a PA structuring the informational environment integral to how we think and how we make decisions, especially as our informational searches or access to information is more and more mediated through digital online platforms. So filter bubbles are particularly interesting because there's that informational environment, and people are only seeing information that they're likely to be interested in, that they agree with. And so already there's a level of hidden information, and you've got all sorts of issues arising with misinformation, with fake news, with the drawing into question legitimacy of certain distribution of information sites. And so this, coupled with the fact that we are creatures of ease, I'll talk about this more in a bit, we don't really, if the environment in which we're receiving information, we're not completely aware that it is, as a result of PAs, there's also not a lot of friction or impetus for us to seek out counterfactuals. We tend to assume that what we're seeing is legitimate, especially like if you Google. And so you've got the formation of things like echo chambers, where people just only see the certain facts aligned with their certain worldviews. And the danger of this is that we're already being shown particular kinds of information over others, and we don't have any control over what that information is, how the parameters of the information are defined. And we also don't have a lot of recourse by which to gain levels of control. And that's why I linked PAs to autonomy. I thought that the fact that we do rely on information to inform the decisions that we take, that we could understand as exercising autonomy, PAs have a lot of implications for that. So to establish an understanding of autonomy, I use an understanding of two orders of autonomy. First order autonomy is the idea that you can set the rules that you want to live by, and you can question those rules. And if those rules are going to bring you into harm or you don't agree with them, you can reject them if it's necessary. And second order autonomy is like you choose the way of life that you want to live. You choose in accordance of your notion of the good, and that you are protected from undue influence that would seek you to choose a certain way of life rather than another one you may be more likely to take. And the ideal understanding of autonomy is when you can both choose your way of life and critically engage with the rules that that way of life comes with. However, that doesn't preclude the idea that you could choose non-autonomous ways of life. But we need to try, if we are trying to look at the design of a function like a PA, we need to examine the social environment in which choices occur, because our innate social nature means that we are subtly influenced by environmental factors in our decision making. And so we really need to unpack, is our environment pushing us to make some decisions rather than others? And could those decisions potentially be resulting in harm? Could we be choosing with second order autonomy to use the internet and PAs, and consequently give up our ability to question the rules that come with that? If so, there may be an option for a justified intervention, where you intervene to try to prevent harm, or you prevent the collusion of social forces to push certain choices upon people. And so what's really integral to this understanding of autonomy is that we have a certain minimum sphere of that is protected from undue interference. And within that, we have the ability in which we can come to form our own reasons, to form our reasons for action we might take. And part of forming our own reasons is a certain reason or evidence sensitivity. So we can go and look for the information that there is, and we can in that start to come to terms with why we're going to do the certain things that we do. And obviously, some levels of influence are unavoidable. Like, you can't have perfect information environments. I think we're all aware that power relationships and politics all influence the way that information is framed to begin with. But in something like, a search engine, in how information is retrieved and portrayed, I think it's really important that when you seek out evidence that you would probably use to help you in the real world or to inform what you think, that shouldn't be used, and that should be guarded from potential manipulation, because that could potentially impede our ability or our capacity to act on our own reasons for action. So I think that what's important to state is I don't think personalization is a problem for autonomy per se, if it's constrained and designed in a particular way. We need to be able to have a level of transparency, a level of control, and a level of choice, which are all things that we really don't have right now with regards to PAs. And I mean, they are starting to mediate some of the biggest platforms in which we interact with the most. And that means that we are vulnerable to hidden influences, to having our information potentially manipulated in ways that we can't understand. And like I mentioned earlier, I don't think I'm amiss in saying, and there's like research to back this up, that we're not perfect decision makers. We are, as human beings, prone to cognitive biases. We have certain, fragilities and vulnerabilities, and potentially personalization could supplement the areas in which we are weaker. I argue for a personalization algorithm for autonomy, and what I see that being is counteracting what Daniel Kahneman calls the "what you see is all there is" bias. And we have a tendency as human beings to take what we see as a true representation of the world. And what's happening on search engine results, for instance, is, we see how many of us go to the second page of the Google search result bar, So we tend to look at the information that we see immediately and we think, okay, well, this is a fair representation of what it is. And the opacity in the algorithm means that people more likely, because they don't understand truly what's going on when they see certain kinds of information, they don't really seek out more information. They tend to accept it. And so personalization algorithms could potentially be a kind of intervention to counteract the "what you see is all there is." They could provide an opportunity to set up an environment, an information environment, that could flag our biases, that could increase our awareness of, certain trends in our interest, introduce counterfactuals, like, we don't necessarily have to engage with it, but it could perhaps put together a fairer representation of evidence available. And then facilitate the building of our own decision-making heuristics. So in terms of designing PAs to enable rather than impede autonomy, I think that we really need to have increased transparency and awareness, which I think are like maybe going to be the buzzwords of a lot of research today, which is like, we really need to understand how these machine learning algorithms are being trained, the work they're being set to use, and then also unpacking implications such as, with misinformation and filter bubbles. And I think we need increased choice. I think it's a little bit beyond my scope, but I just thought that this is something we need a little bit more control over, in terms of like, you can't stop people from interacting with certain types of content over others, nor I don't think should we want to. But we should, if you don't have a choice with, let's say I'm only being shown politics of a certain slant, I should maybe, and I don't really want that, I want an increased choice, I should be able to, expand it. So I think that there's a possibility here for increased critical evaluation and regulation of how PAs work. And yeah, I think they really could be a powerful tool in terms of, being set to work on issues of misinformation and filter bubbles and cognitive biases. And yeah, I think it's really important to look at something like this tool that mediates information that's essential for us. I mean, especially given like the COVID pandemic lockdowns around the world, where more and more of the information we get is mediated through these algorithms. And we really want to guard ourselves against manipulations. We want to trust that the evidence that we're trying to seek out isn't being coerced, isn't being manipulated or messed with. Obviously, there's other factors you can't control for, which is different opinions and different slants. But I think having a designed environment that maybe can't necessarily target like people's opinions, but can maybe try represent things in a fairer way, could be a really helpful tool in the current environment. So yes, these are definitely some tenets I think should be further explored. And I really think that we need to realize that we as individuals are quite vulnerable at the moment to potential coercion, to potential misinformation. So I think we can harness this tool for to enable rather than hinder autonomy. And yeah, also as a way to check the power asymmetry that's resulting from the asymmetry of information that we're seeing in some of the big technology companies across the world. So anyway, thank you so much for your time.